Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. I hope you are having a fabulous week. Oh, I just see my shadow now. Oh, well, that's okay. So sorry that we are late. I had a little trouble with lighting, obviously. You may see me adjusting as we go. But also I had AirPod issues and all sorts of technical issues. What's new? It's Kelly's World, right? I am here with Ray, Cheryl, and Holly. Everyone came this week, so we are here to answer your questions and chat about our seahorses. I am sipping on Chardonnay. Let me know what you're sipping on. And tonight is open chat, so we can talk about whatever in the heck you want to talk about. I have been working on the side, have a couple guests coming up, but you'll hear about that in posts. And in the meantime, let's have some fun tonight. Hi, Zen Ginger. I love that you guys come even when we're late. I really appreciate all of you. Um, so let's go around real quick and just anything new, anything seahorse or otherwise related, tell me before I jump in and start talking about all of my seahorse questions because I have quite a few for this week. But I want to hear from you. And if my audio or video gets wanky, please let me know in the comment section. Holly, what's new with you?
So, not too much. I heard from Kelly that the Diamox I sent her worked.
Oh,
And
good.
remember, it was expired, but recently expired a couple months. And she said it worked. Her seahorse isn't floating anymore. So it worked right away. She said it helped. So that
Good.
was that was good news. And then other than that, not too much. With my seahorses, I've been busy um, working out in the field, so I'm not home a lot. So they've just been getting two meals a day. One in the morning and then one in the early evening, late afternoon, whenever I get home. But they're hanging in and doing all right. Today was tank cleaning day, so I was home all day. They got three meals and they're happy with that. So I'm almost done though for the season, so they'll get more of my attention pretty soon within the next couple weeks. So, but yeah, they're hanging in, but I can tell, they're not happy about the situation.
Sure.
It's schedules mixed up. They like being on a set schedule. Seahorses do. I've noticed they're like dogs. They know when it's time to eat,
Yeah.
and they'll go the dish and wait. So today it was lunchtime and they're not used to getting lunch anymore because I've been gone at that time of day. So I fed a lunch and it was funny because Dandy was right next to his dish, but he was taking a nap after the tank cleaning. He was facing the wrong direction and he was laying down with his head like right next to the dish, but facing the wrong way to eat.
Mm.
And it took him a while to wake up and realize that there was food there. It was almost time for me to clean up. By the time he kind of came to, he's like, "Oh, there's lunch
Oh.
today." And
Mm.
then he started eating, so I gave him more time. But so we're getting through it.
They tend to get a little ticked off at you if you're not on time. They get used to a
Yeah,
set schedule, and they get
yeah,
like, "What's wrong with you today, Mom?"
yeah, yeah. They get a little attitude sometimes. Sadie does.
Speaking of which, can I ask? No, I'm kidding.
No.
I was saying I was going to kid about I need prescription drug coverage.
Oh yeah, the last minute. Yeah, no, I'm going through that right now. I've got people, that I called months ago to try to schedule an appointment that didn't want to schedule an appointment. Yeah, I think I'm going to be fine for this year. Now they call me for an appointment when my schedule's
Oh,
full.
yeah.
I just pick up the phone once every year and say, "Leave everything the same. Don't change anything.
Yep.
Well, the
Goodbye."
problem is, yeah, with my, because I'm doing straight Medicare Part D plans, they change every year.
Yeah.
And the client wants them to stay the same, but the plans don't change the same. So yeah, don't stay the same. So you better look at it,
Right. Right.
and look at your coverage for next year and see if you're okay with it, because they can change their formulary,
Oh
they can
yeah.
change the premium.
But you see,
Um,
I have a healthcare spending account through my retirement, through the employers that I had at the time. So I don't, even
nice.
if they even cut
That
out the
can help
Plan
with
B, I'd still
maintenance
have
and
everything covered.
It just
mhm.
depends on the system you set up. And Holly's there to help anybody who needs help setting up that system for sure.
Well,
Cheryl,
if you're in California
right.
or New Mexico,
You're
I'm
right.
licensed in California and New Mexico, so those are my
Well,
two.
if
I
I
love the coast in California just as a visual, particularly some of the stuff farther north. But
mhm.
you couldn't pay me enough money to move in and live in California any longer. I did that too long as it was.
Oh,
Well,
I love it. It's beautiful, but yeah, it's getting expensive. That's for sure.
and
With the
It's
fire danger stuff
yeah.
and all that.
California is a big place. It depends on where you're at for sure. And Cheryl, anything seahorse related new with you?
What?
Is there anything seahorse related that's new with you?
Uh, depends. In my case, I'm home all the time anymore, so I
Yes.
don't do the rushing home, freaking out that I have a fry to feed, and adults to feed, and rushing in and waking up at 5:30 in the morning to catch the fry that they all decide to deliver all at once, like multiple mails. And it's life is definitely much more low key than it used to be.
Gotcha. Well, I'm
Yeah,
glad.
her seahorses are probably on a schedule. They eat the same time every day.
Well, I remember one morning waking up and I knew I had a pregnant male in my 60-gallon tank. And sure enough, I could tell because he was heading toward the top and so were the shrimp and fry were starting to come out. I look over at the 90-gallon, which was my big grow out tank, and I had a pair. I had more than one pair in there that were still young. Well, one pair wasn't young enough.
They weren't young enough. Yeah.
And so I ended up with two tanks full of fry.
In
I
the
had to go to
same
work at
morning.
7:30.
Well,
There
I've got
was one
news
thing
on
I
my
liked though. Mine always had the fry early in the morning, just before breakfast.
see
Right
my
at breakfast.
that kind of schedule, and I do when we get around to me, I do have some news about some questions I have about breeding because some things have been changing. But I do want to ask real quick, Ray, anything new with you that you want to share?
I just miss having the seahorses, but
Yeah,
I don't miss the not having to do the work.
right.
Right. I understand that, Ray. I completely understand that point of view.
Especially now when I've got so much time to spend on the dogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, side note, Zen Ginger said she actually got a new Lego creator set that is a dolphin and turtle, but one of the variations is a seahorse instead. See, I'm still pissed that we don't have a
Sweet.
seahorse emoji, right? Like, or emicon, whatever you call it. You go on Facebook, you go on your Apple phone, whatever, your iPhone, and you don't have a seahorse. We need a seahorse. I understand that most people don't use a seahorse in a sentence, and that's what they're kind of going upon. But they got all this weird shit, dragons and
I
everything.
know they have so many.
Yeah, why can't we have a seahorse? I'm trying to create it myself, but I'm not that advanced. But anyhow, yeah. So I just dropped my phone and it totally threw me off. But Zen, I think it's cool that you're doing the seahorse. I wish we had more things that were seahorse themed that we could snatch onto. But I'm glad everybody's doing okay for as far as things are going. So let's get to me, right? Unless you guys in the comment section have questions or Salty wants to jump in and tell us how he's doing. But I did have a few questions for you guys based on my current tanks. And I want to know, first of all, I know none of you three have kept an all-in-one, so this probably doesn't pertain to you. But I'm curious to anyone out there who watches this, and even if you're not watching right now, later and I'll see it. I'd like to know how often you maintenance your all-in-one tank equipment. And what I mean by that is I did a massive water change because if you haven't watched recently, basically after I went on vacation, I came back, there was some algae. The babysitter was doing a great job. The seahorse sitter, I guess, did a great job feeding and everything, but I think she left the light on too long. It may not have been her fault. It may have been programming. I'm just saying, I think the lighting affected the algae. Okay. And so I'm trying to get rid of the algae. I took my rocks out of the tank one by one, put them in tank water and scrubbed them so that I'm not killing off all the bacteria, but I'm trying to get rid of the algae. And of course, my tank got really cloudy and everything got messy. It's cleared up now, as it always does. But I noticed when I did a massive water change to compensate, I don't think my skimmer's working like it should anymore. And we've already all discussed that an all-in-one skimmer isn't going to be very good anyways, right? It's already not like the skimmer I got. Okay, so I have a 40-gallon all-in-one and the skimmer is rated 60 gallons. So that's time and a half. We always say you want a skimmer rated 2 times at least. Cheryl will tell you to get a skimmer 5 times, right? Get the biggest skimmer you can. In my case, with an all-in-one tank, all I can do is the biggest skimmer I could find for an all-in-one, unless I want to do some outside of the tank stuff, which you guys know I'm lazy. I don't want to do that. So anyways, it worked really well for a while, but now that I'm seeing problems because the tank's been running for so long, I guess my bottom line question is, if you're working with an all-in-one and equipment that isn't as great as you'd like, but as good as you can get, do you maintenance it more frequently? Because I noticed, I know I'm rambling, guys, but bottom line, end of the story is, I noticed when I did this massive water change, there was nothing in the skimmer cup. And I was like, what? How is there nothing in the skimmer cup? So I took the whole skimmer out. I ran the pump in vinegar, but it's been going. What? How long, Holly? How long have I had this tank? 2 years?
Oh, geez. Well, yeah, I want to say about 2 or 2.5 because the seahorse I sent you just turned 3.
Okay.
So, how long did you have
no.
the tank set up before her?
At least 6 months. So the tank's been going 3.5 years. And I'll admit, I hadn't done maintenance, like deep maintenance on the equipment. I clean it every time. I clean the sides. Dan always said people mess up because they're not cleaning their skimmer cups. They're not cleaning the insides of the skimmer. So I always did that, but I had never pulled the actual skimmer out and run like the pump through vinegar. So my question is, how often do you guys do that? We talked about maintenance in your pumps, but I think it kind of depends on the type of tank, because in an all-in-one, it's even more important because it's filling more, you're expecting more of it. And I just think 3.5 years is probably way too long not to have cleaned it. And I want to hear what your guys' schedule is, how often you deep maintenance your equipment. And like with the K1, Cheryl, this is a question for you. With my K1 container, literally it's a homemade 1 liter bottle, inverted, that has the airline making it spin, right? I noticed that there's some stuff collecting towards the top near the holes, likely because of the light, because it's black. It looks like black algae to me, but it's on the inside of the container. Are we supposed to like change out the container so often, or it's hard to understand because we do understand at the back of our minds that algae is actually a good thing. Algae is removing nutrients, but if you're not removing the algae, it's just sitting there and it's affecting.
If you're getting algae like that, you really need to just pull it out and basically clean it. And what I typically do, though I rarely change my K1 media, but it's up toward the very beginning, early on in the sump. And so it goes through, before it gets back into the tank, it's gone through a filter sock, a K1 media reactor, uh, a wide variety of different, multiple baffles, multiple live rock in there. Uh, it's gone through a couple other things. What are the little packets that they have?
Purigen.
Purigen. I mean, if it exists, it's probably in my tanks. Quite frankly.
No, I get it. I know I asked you, Cheryl, just because of the K1 aspect of it, but I wonder how often people that are running K1, and of course, as Cheryl just said, it depends on how you're running K1.
Remember, when you're running, when you're
if you have it in a sump, in a situation like Cheryl does, that's a lot different than me having it in a 1 liter container in the back of an all-in-one right under the light, right? So light's hitting it constantly. It's growing stuff at the top. And when I say growing stuff at the top, I mean on the inside of the container. So it's not like I can clean it. I can't clean it. So I'm just curious, and I'm doing this, of course, so that as I learn, I can help people in the future who say, what do I do when this happens? Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a new 1 liter.
I was going to say, just make a new one, probably the easiest.
But use the same K1. Yeah. Don't mess that up.
See,
but just get a new container.
This is the kind of stuff why I ultimately switched to my large sumps for each tank. I can put a K1 media reactor in there, and I can forget about it for a year or more. But I've got so much flow going through that section in there that I don't get any kind of buildup of detritus at all. So I don't have any algae or anything like that in there. And I admit that I change my water on a regular basis. That's nothing new. And I clean my skimmers. They have to be pulled out and cleaned. But the K1 media reactors, once they go in a tank, I hardly ever take them out.
Well, I think the difference is that in the all-in-one, your K1 media reactor, any kind of equipment is right under the light. So like if you have sump, you probably don't have lighting down there.
No. Yeah, we don't.
Is the problem. I had someone else, I think it was Holly, suggest putting something over that area, like, just something to block the light. And I think once I change it out, I'm going to do that and see how that affects things.
That would probably be a good idea. The biggest problem you're going to run in is going to depend on how you put. If you put like filter fabric in there, and you can actually do a garden of algae in your container, that might help you. The problem is, with you have such limited space, it's going to be difficult to do.
Right.
That's one of the things that I like about what I've got is I can throw in a huge K1 media reactor and still have run for my 300 gallon per hour or gallon per hour. Anyway, for my K1, my K1 media, I have a filter sock. I have, of course, the what I refer to as my gunk zapper.
Yeah.
I have so much room to put stuff in, and that makes a huge difference.
Well, and that is the key. We're always going to recommend, if you're setting up a Seahorse tank and you want a long-term success, put on a sump. Do it, big, lots of water volume, lots of equipment. I'm just doing this again, you guys, to prove that you can do it in a smaller tank. It just might take more work. So there's, like, again, the risk tolerance level. Yeah. What are you willing to risk? And are you willing to do more work? And maybe I wasn't the best one to do this experiment because, I'm busy and lazy. But besides the point, and I hope to share that knowledge later, Cheryl, you did say you constantly do clean your skimmers and such. How often do you clean your skimmers? Like,
It depends on what my stocking density is. I mean, if I've got 15 to 30 young seahorses, it's probably not going to show up in the tank at all.
okay.
It's going to be clean in itself. But when I get up to the 100 numbers, um, it definitely requires more work to keep it clean.
The skimmer?
I'm sorry?
The
No,
skimmer.
Yeah. How often do you clean the skimmer? Like the pump on the skimmer, the actual skimmer. How often do you clean that?
It depends on the stocking density at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I mean, I can sit there and I can have 30 in one of the tanks with the 29-gallon sump, and I can run the 300 gallon per hour skimmer, and that combined with the K1, the Purigen, and everything else,
Sure.
it really doesn't require hardly any work. And even the skimmers, I've got some skimmers that are a bit of a pain to clean, but normally they don't. I can leave them in there for several months without even doing anything with them.
Well, and obviously I'm talking years here, so I'm the one that's
Years here.
Yeah. But I think we need to come up with a ratio of water volume versus skimmer activity or rating or whatever, that just to give a very generalized, not specific, but generalized guide. Like, you need to clean your pumps at least this often, right? Even if it's once a year, once a 6 months, whatever. But I just think I have messed up. Like, my skimmer was pulling nothing, and I
Well,
didn't realize it because the pump was pulling nothing because it was clogged up and gunked up.
now
Well,
I'll be
say
honest.
this.
I keep extra pumps on hand, both for return, for skimmers, and everything else. And when I look at a tank, if anything looks a little bit gummy, it gets pulled out, thrown into a cleaner, it gets thoroughly cleaned. And I have enough pumps around here that I can probably put 2 to 3 more pumps on each tank system. But I have plenty of extras. And some of my pumps, the other thing, I have a lot of the old Marineland pumps that were built in Italy and came with a lifetime warranty. I still have some of those that are over 15 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to say, at our house, I mean, we've had fish and ponds forever, mostly freshwater, until I did the seahorses. That's pretty much my only saltwater. But over the years, the only time a pump or equipment gets cleaned is if there's a problem.
See, but
And then you do it and it's working again.
I know.
So,
But how many problems would we avoid if we had in our own heads? I'm not saying like a rule, but
yeah.
if I said I need to run my pumps in vinegar every 6 months, then how many problems would I avoid because I didn't have to wait for a problem to react to it?
But we hardly ever have any problems. We go years between. I mean, we have, like I said, ponds, freshwater tanks. There's almost never a problem. It's like years. A pump will be running 4 years and then there's a problem. So it's not like stuff is happening all the time. And then usually, honestly, we just run it through hot water. We don't even use vinegar.
Really?
And then if something's jammed, like if a pump, Scott knows how to take them apart. He'll take the pump apart and put it back together and it's fine. So we've had one 20 some years, and just now and then something you notice, oh, that's not working right. So you take it out, run it through hot water, clean it, whatever, and you're good to go again. So I haven't really had that many problems like that.
Maybe I'm making too big a deal about it. Maybe I'm being overreactive or whatever. It's possible, it happens. That's me. But I just feel like I don't like to walk up to my tank and realize the skimmer's not working and it's not pulling anything. And I wish for me, I'm going to come up with a better maintenance routine because the pump it was all gunked up. Maybe it's my settings. Maybe it's because I have that after the UV sterilizer. I don't know, but I just know it was all gunked up. And Zen Ginger said her newest marine land can is running for 5 years, and it's the only one you haven't had to replace. Yeah, see, I mean, so it depends on the equipment you get, and I'm just thinking maintenance, like that canister filter. How often do you clean it? When I used a canister, I was cleaning it often, like every other water change, because I was so afraid of canister filters with seahorses, not on a regular tank, but just curious on that. Ray, you've been typing stuff. What do you want to say?
I got to check and see what I said now. Okay. Yeah, with my skimmers, of course, mine are homemade,
Right.
but I only serviced them if there was an indication that they weren't working as well. I didn't wait till they quit working. If it wasn't working as well, and if I couldn't dial it in to get it back to what it was,
Yeah.
then I would clean them out.
Yeah.
Typically, you're looking at many years though.
Well, and with an all-in-one, again, it's not the right way to keep seahorses. I'm trying to prove that you can do it if you're in an apartment or if you're in a place and you just really love seahorses and want to keep them. I'm showing that you can. It's just more work, but it's not the right way. The best way is to use a sump, have room to play with.
So many variables when it comes to what is going to affect the performance of a skimmer that you can't set something that is going to work for you and for everybody else. It might work for a few individuals, but the majority of people are going to not need to do it as often as what you might.
Well, yeah.
Right. Well, wait, hang on. Have you talked, Cheryl? Because I'm going to go grab the cup of the skimmer and show you guys something on an all-in-one skimmer. So give me a second. You guys talk till I get back. It'll literally be a second. Go, Cheryl.
I was just going to say that with a skimmer, it depends on how much flow you've got, how big the skimmer is, how much the big thing is how much flow you're running through it. And I agree with you, Ray. Some of my skimmers, I'll periodically pull them out and do a little quick cleaning on them. But 90% of the time, I don't really get in and do a lot of heavy duty cleaning on the skimmers.
Yeah, mine, I just cleaned for the first time in, I want to say it's been running close to 4 years now. And I wipe down like when I see the insides getting filmy, not the cut part, but the neck of it, all that, I'll reach in and clean that, wipe it down. I empty the cup every day and wipe that out, every morning, but I never took it apart and flushed it and cleaned it until I noticed, it wasn't working like it should. The water wasn't rising as far as it needed to. And I'm like, oh, I need to do something about this. So I took it out and took out the pump and ran it through hot water and it wasn't that hard to take apart, so I put it back together. I didn't use vinegar or anything. I just put it back together, put it in there, and it was running fine right after. So I really didn't put much maintenance to it at all over the years. And it's been, I want to say those skimmers I got 4 years ago, I think, roughly.
So maybe it's the type of skimmer, and just because I'm dealing with an all-in-one.
Probably the small size.
Tell me if you can see what I'm sharing. Let's see if I'm doing it right. Here we go. Can you see it? Oh, not the Black Friday. Can you guys see it?
Not yet. I can tell you originally when I first started my tank, I had a small hang-on back skimmer, and that thing was a pain. I had to clean it all the time.
Hey, I broke those down. I bought a couple and decided I could not use them. The SCA 302s which I got years ago when they were about 60 to $70. They're now almost $300 a piece. And come to find out here a few years back that these are the same skimmers that Alicia and Dan used for their seahorses. So I wondered why I didn't have any problems with them because I got lucky and happened to have the presence of mind to get lucky and pick out the skimmers that really work in essence.
Yeah, I like mine. They're simplicity skimmers. I found them on Amazon, and they've got like a little controller, programmable speed, and then they've got, of course, you can adjust the air and adjust the height of the water level and all that. So they're
Yeah.
fully adjustable and controllable, and I love those. But my first skimmer, like I said, it was a little hang on back about this big, maybe not quite 2 feet tall, and the cup only that big around. And I had to empty it multiple times a day. And that thing was just a pain in the butt. I think it was called a Cyclone. And that was, I've had it. Oh, geez. When did I get that? Early 2000s.
Well,
It was a pain. And it was small. And I think that's why. Because my tank, of course, is 55 gallon. But I just had this little skimmer on it. And the cup would fill up, in like half a day. Ugh.
Well, here's the problem. You guys are all talking about bigger skimmers. I've used in sumps. I've got a massive skimmer on the 65 gallon. It's so big it's half the sump, literally. And that's the way to do it, right? But again, I'm just trying to show people who want to keep a smaller seahorse tank that you can. And unfortunately, you need a better skimmer for an all-in-one. Because this, I can't for some reason share the picture of the skimmer, but I can tell you it's literally just the black box, the pump is at the bottom, the cup is at the top. The only way that I can adjust how much water goes in is this. Let me make myself big while I'm doing this. Here we go.
Yeah. Is that the cup you're holding?
This is the cup, and the only way I can adjust how much scum can get in or how the bubbles come in is this little rubber band thing.
Yeah, that's about the size mine was.
Hang on, let me finish. And the
I'm
only
going
way
to give you
I can adjust,
a quick funny one.
hang on. The only way I can adjust the air is this little thing. That's it. That's my only method of adjustment for this all-in-one skimmer. It's like,
it's small. That was about the size of mine. And that's why I had so much trouble with it, because it wasn't as big a skimmer as I really needed. So it would fill, like I said, in like half a day.
Right. And Ray, you said you have a picture of one of yours and you could stick your head in the container, right?
Yeah, the collector sitting on the top was about a cube of about a foot inside.
Not this little.
Yeah.
And I get it, but this is all that can fit in an all-in-one.
Yeah.
So again, I'm making the case for, if you want to keep seahorses and you want to do it long term, don't do an all-in-one. Do a tank with a sump where you have more room to do a bigger skimmer and have more. And visually, you can see when something's going wrong. In the all-in-one, all I see at the back of the tank, I'll take a picture in a minute and try to share it. But basically, all I see is the cup, because this is hidden by the back of the tank.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's stuff down there. I don't know. All I know is there's no gunk being so wide, right? So I'm just trying to help.
Well, the back of your tank, Kelly, isn't it just like a slot? Like, it's not very wide, is it?
It's a slot that's much wider than this.
Okay.
And it does have compartments as if it were a sump, but it's just that they're not very big. You couldn't fit more than the sump. I looked around for sumps that were rated higher that I could put in. They won't fit.
I
So,
think it's just small. It's funny, my 55-gallon tank, I inherited it from somebody and it came with a sump. It was actually, I guess, what you call a trickle filter,
mhm.
where it goes through into bioballs and stuff. But it was literally, I think it probably held like maybe 3 gallons of water in that thing. And that's what I started out with. Yeah, when I started my Seahorse tank, and then I upgraded to an actual big sump and got a real skimmer, a big one, and all that. But I did notice, it just wasn't enough. Yeah, it wasn't enough filtration for that tank. And I think that's probably what you're running into with the all-in-one is kind of the same thing that I was with mine. And the first time I did Seahorses years ago, I used a canister filter. And that was one of the things that I hated about the canister filter was it just wasn't enough. I was cleaning it all the time and it was a pain in the butt to clean that thing. And that's why I really prefer sumps now. They're just so much easier
Yeah,
to deal
it's
with than any other filtration.
I wouldn't go back to anything other than the kind of stuff that I have now. And even some of those I built initially as sumps and then I wasn't happy with the way the baffles were. And I redid the baffles until I got them all the way I wanted them. And it took quite a bit of work and time, but it really pays off when you've got the equipment that really works well in a particular type of system.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can show that picture on that link that I sent?
I'm gonna try. First, I'm gonna try to share this picture. We were sharing pictures just last week, so I don't know why I'm having trouble now. Hang on. Let me try to share this first.
I actually found one of my young seahorses in the collection cup on the skimmer.
I love that. I found him in the filter sock, but I've never found one in the skimmer. That's funny.
They're like bubble
Did he,
wrap.
Yeah,
did he
you weren't
survive?
alone.
Was he alive too?
And I'm sitting there looking at her, how in the bleep bleep did you get in there?
Was it okay? Did it survive?
Oh yeah, it was fine. The worst part was getting it out of the darn collection cup because every time you try to go through it, it'd get back down in the tube, but it wouldn't go down deep enough to get out. And lifting it up didn't work because couldn't only go so far, and then it'd start panicking. And it
Right.
must have taken me at least an hour to get that darn seahorse out of that collection.
That's really funny.
Holly, I don't
Can
know
laugh
why,
now.
but I don't know why, but my computer's giving me trouble, not letting me share. I know you've been able to share.
Want me to? Let me see. Let me pull that up.
I sent the picture to the Wine Wednesday chat on Facebook. See if you can share
I
that.
got it up. So yeah, let me go to share.
Oh,
Do you have a copy of Ray's picture with the effluent that's attaching to the ceiling?
all right, Holly's got to share.
There it is. If you guys can see it.
Oh, this is Grace. Yep.
That's about a foot cube.
Yeah.
Isn't that Ray?
That is definitely a potential problem.
Oh wait, what are we looking
It's
at, Ray?
I
disgusting.
dialed it in a little bit too much.
So what are we looking at?
That's the top of my skimmer.
Okay, and these are your homemade skimmers, and what
Yeah.
over working?
I think you need
I
to
made a
empty that
change on
cup, Ray.
As far as I can recall now, I had made a change in the setting on it and got sidetracked. I had to go do something. When I come back, that's what it was doing.
Well, and see, that's my fear of doing something massive on the outside of the tank is something like that. I don't want
Yeah,
that.
when mine overflow, at least they're inside the sump.
Right.
But see, that's just the foam. The water won't overflow because there is an overflow. See that there's a hose there underneath.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah, I see
comes
it.
from a level that maybe 2/3 of the way up. So if the fluid gets up that high, it goes back down and goes back down into the skimmer again.
Yeah, it goes down the drain. Yeah, that's smart.
I figure it doesn't hurt anything to go back. It came from there, so putting it back in just means it'll have to
You'll have
skim it
to go
again.
through the process again. Yeah, right.
Hover my picture so I can
Yeah,
explain.
let me stop and see. I have to see because I only saw his. Okay, let me get out of here.
It's in the
All
one.
right. Where is yours?
Okay, so I believe I just sent it to the one. Yeah, it's in the Wine Wednesday chat.
Oh, okay. I need to pull.
It's you
Oh,
like
where the people are chatting, you mean?
no, I mean in our Facebook Wine Wednesday chat.
Oh, okay. Well, hang on because I got to go to that.
Or I can send it to you in text. Is that easier?
Well, where Ray did was good, but I see it now. I just had to go to my Facebook. So let
Oh,
me get it ready and then I'll share.
okay.
You've got to go to your baseball stuff to get Seahorse information.
There we go. Well, it was where she shared it. It wasn't on our
I'm
screen.
messing
It's
with you.
on Messenger. Okay. All right. So now I can. So let me close that.
And I just want to show you guys
There
how,
we
like
go.
how an all-in-one works.
So there it is.
Okay, so all I'm showing you guys is this is the top of the all-in-one. You know, the lights on the top, obviously. If you look at the on your screen, I believe, the very left-hand corner, this is where water flows in to a sock. And I've got Aquachar and Purigen in there. There's a Robert King char chamber right here. Can you guys see my arrows? Okay.
No.
All right, right
Because we're
behind.
seeing the picture, not your screen. We're seeing it on my side, not yours.
You're right. Okay. So behind
But I can kind of. So
yeah,
here's
so
where the water comes in, right?
and that's the big sock. Now go down a little bit.
And there's the char chamber.
There is the big
Right.
char chamber that's in the tank. But the entire back wall is what hides the compartments in an all-in-one. So the next chamber, point to the very next chamber, right
Over
there.
here.
You see the black
Right
on
here.
top of my that is my K1 media reactor. I have a little block of not floss, what's it called? Like sponge. I have a little block of sponge.
Yeah, that's this. And then here's the K1 right here.
Yes. And so that's a media reactor where the K1 is tumbling, but do you see the black at the top of it?
Oh,
Back-
yeah. I get that at the top of my tiki tank right under the light.
Yes, and you see the light is right there. So
Yeah.
I think I need to block it off. Then the part that the light is literally covering is where the pumps are. That one and the next one. And then
Over
right there, that is the skimmer. I've removed the cup because I was showing you guys, but that's where the skimmer is. And the next part is where I have UV sterilizer and sponge. So, I mean, I'm trying, I've got all the equipment. I'm trying to show how you can do it, but the skimmer just stopped working. It just wasn't giving me any gunk. And I mean, like, I don't see a reason for it. It has been 3.5 years, so maybe that's it. But
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out, like, where would you put a more effective skimmer? You'd have to do it outside the tank. There's no room.
Yeah.
Look at how that skimmer fits into that hole.
Yeah.
Do one bigger.
Yeah, you just can't. You could add a hang on back one, like add hang on backs, I think, but still it's not going to be as effective, I think, as if you had, a full size skimmer.
Yeah.
In the sump.
Just buy a couple extra ones, and
And this, I mean, as
skimmers.
far as your K1 media reactor, I would just prepare a few of those bottles and just trade them out now and then because that's easy,
I agree.
That's a quick
and maybe
fix.
Well, and a really easy quick fix also would be to just cover it with cardboard or something,
Yeah, you
make
know
sure.
what? I put dish towels over, and I think it was actually you that suggested this because I have that issue with my hang on back overflow boxes on the tiki tank. They get full of algae. And
Hmm.
I put a dish towel over the top of them, and that helped. But I
Yeah, I think I remember that.
I don't have that now. It helped while I pulled them off because the problem with doing that is when you cover stuff up, and if you're kind of lazy and busy like I am, you don't notice what's going on inside of the thing that you cover up.
Ah, gotcha, gotcha. Gotta be just like a canister filter, right?
Yes,
You gotta remember
exactly. It's the
that.
same issue with canister filters. If you're not seeing it and you don't think about it and you don't clean it often enough. So I like to see what's going on inside of my stuff. Because then I'm like,
What?
oh, I need to do this,
Yeah.
because I'm a busy person, but I'm also a lazy person.
Right, right. I'm right there with you, Ray. What did you have to say about it?
Oh, I would just take some plastic coat black paint and spray the bottom, which is on the top because it's inverted, right?
Yes.
Just spray that area around there enough to block the light because plastic coat paint stands up to the salt water.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
that's what I spray. I always sprayed the decorations with that.
Well, that's pretty smart. That's not good too. All right. Well,
Are
cool.
you ready for me to stop sharing?
Yeah, I already stopped you, but you didn't.
Oh, okay. Because I'm not looking at you guys, I'm looking at this.
Yeah, stop sharing.
When I'm sharing, I can't see anything else.
I know. I must.
Well, we're not seeing now anyway. It's not shared anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, she took it down, but because I was on the other tab, the tab of Facebook, I couldn't see you guys. I only saw that.
Well,
That's the one part that sucks about sharing here. And I don't know why my computer won't let me. I'll have to play with it. But
Huh.
thank you, Holly, for sharing. And if we've covered that enough, I think we'll move on to my next Seahorse question. And then I'll go and see if there's any questions in the comment section. But if you have any questions, of course, we're just open chat. We're just chatting. So any questions you have or comments, we love them. But we talked about this previous weeks, you guys. I've noticed it more and more. And I did have algae going on when I got back from vacation. And I noticed the seahorses were kind of funky about eating. So I did this massive cleaning. They still will not touch food that hits the floor. And I mean, it's incredible. I'm wasting all this food because I'm not able in the all-in-one to keep it circulating, and they're just not eating it if it's on the floor. I don't know what to think. I think there's got to be like when you have a bare bottom tank, maybe bacteria grows there. I mean, I know it does, but maybe it's growing too rapidly or something. I don't know, but they will not touch food that touches the bottom of the tank, no matter what. Don't care if there's a pile, if there's one, they will not touch it. Nobody else has experienced this, right?
No, mine
They know
mine slow down sometimes, but different. But it's I don't know what it is, but this time of year, as long as I've kept the seahorses, they kind of slow down in winter with
Yeah,
their eating. Do you think it might be
no,
that and not
no.
really the
I'm telling
bottom?
you, no, you're making a good point. I'm not arguing it, but I'm to watch them like I'll blow the food up off the floor. So it's now in the water column. And they'll go swimming over like they're starving. And they'll look at it and they'll be watching it and they'll be going to hunt it and it hits the floor and they will not eat it. They'll stare at
what brand are you using?
Hikari. And they're not little pieces. I'm
Now
wondering.
my big tank, the display tank, they won't eat off the floor
Yes, see,
ever. But my other ones will.
I
I
don't know.
wonder.
I don't know if it's a Seahorse personality thing. Another question for Ray and Cheryl is, could it maybe be that it's piling up food? Meaning there's not a pile of food, but like it doesn't look like a shrimp anymore because there's so many pieces all sitting there. I don't know, but they will.
But were they eating off the floor before?
Yes, yes, that's the weird
Then
part.
that doesn't, because it would always be doing the same thing. So I wouldn't think it's that. I'm
But I
wondering
love
if
that.
they were fed differently, maybe while you were gone, and they got used to that, and then now they're like, oh, we don't want to eat off the floor because we didn't have to before.
She followed my instructions to a T. She did it the same way. For
Hmm.
some reason, maybe it is like the seasonal thing. I don't know, but it's driving me nuts because I feel like they're not getting enough food and they won't eat off the floor. Ray, you don't have a reasonable answer. What's your unreasonable
Nope.
answer?
No, I have no idea
No
what
idea.
that is. When it was done, when they were eating before off the bottom and not now,
Well,
I can't think of any explanation. I've never had that happen.
the only thing I can
No.
watching them, and I'll post a couple videos because I've been taking them and being like, what the hell's going on? Because when I first feed, they attack the food. Maybe I'm just feeding too much. Maybe that's it. It could be something simple like that. But like they attack the food. I'm not feeding
Mhm.
any more than I think I always did. And then there's these piles, there's food all over the floor because upgraded the circulation system. So you'll hear a snick every like couple minutes, not like they're
Mhm.
attacking it. And then I'll go over and there's all this food left. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? I've never had this happen before. And when I start to suck it up, they're attacking my turkey baster because it's like they want more food, but they don't want it off the. It's so freaking weird, you guys. I'll take videos.
That's funny. Mine are kind of doing that right now in the tiki tank. Um, the thing is, I went into, this annual election period with Medicare where I'm working all the time. And going into that, I had been feeding them 3 times a day, and now it's only two. And at that time, they were starting to look kind of thin to
Mm-hmm.
me. And I'm like, oh, great. Now I'm not even going to be able to feed them as many times per day. What can I do? So I started overfeeding them.
Gotcha.
Instead of, I used to feed them like half to 3/4 a cube of mysis at each feeding because I'm using the Hikari cubes. Now I'm feeding them a whole cube at every meal. There's too much food. They can't eat it all,
So,
but they're
so wait.
eating more because I think what it is for them in my case is there's more choices.
Mm,
So they're eating more. They're starting to bulk up, even though I'm feeding them less times in a day because they're finding more things that they want to eat than they
yeah,
were
yeah,
before.
but I know Ray has a
They're
lot to say.
very picky. They're slow eaters. They're
But
not eating as much as I think they should, but they seem to be eating more now than they were. I just have to
yeah,
vacuum up more food.
but the thing is, I know Ray has a lot of arguments against this because they
Mhm.
don't. And maybe what you're saying is correct, Holly, is that we're feeding too much because we're feeding less. I'm not, but I get your point. But Ray has pointed out multiple times that they can't digest enough food. So,
Mhm.
like, it doesn't digest. So, more smaller feedings is better for seahorses. And when we're
Mhm.
trying to overfeed them in two settings, they can't eat enough, just like what you're saying. But in my case, I'm not feeding
Mhm.
less. I'm still doing 3 to 4 feedings a day, and
Mhm.
I don't feel like I'm feeding more. It's just really, really weird. But Ray, why don't you tell us real
Yeah.
quick why it's better to more often?
Okay, the main reason that I prefer to feed only what they're going to eat in the 12 to 15 minutes is because if they're eating any more than that, they're going to be pushing the food that's already in the digestive tract, which is very rudimentary. They're going to push it through much faster, and that digestive tract is not going to be able to remove the nutrients that are possible to remove if it goes through at a normal rate. A seahorse in the wild doesn't get food all of a sudden all at once,
Right.
and its system has not evolved to handle that kind of thing. So it's pushing through food and not getting the nutrient out of it. So you're better off uh, if you have to if you can't feed more often through a day. At least if you could wait after the 12 to 15 minutes, wait at least half an hour. That gives that digestive tract time to work on what's in there. And then if you feed them again after that half hour, you get that extra feeding. And while it'll push the food out, it's probably going to be processed almost as much as if you were an hour or two or more um, after the feeding.
Well, no,
But
I really like that, and I think I'm going to try that. I really am, because whether it's that I'm dumping too much food in because I'm overcompensating, because I feel
Mhm.
like they need more, or whatever, maybe it's me. So I'm going to try, like, I work, I do have a schedule.
Yeah.
I feed them while I'm at work, but I'm going to try, like, I'm a night owl, so there's no
Mhm.
reason why I couldn't feed them like 5 times over a
Mhm.
5 hour period. So I'm gonna try
Well, yeah.
that and just do
Mhm.
little bits. And because when I first feed, they attack it. It's not that they're not eating; they're attacking the food. But
Huh.
maybe it is that I'm overfeeding. Maybe it's something silly like that.
I
I
don't know.
I don't feel like I'm feeding more, so it's so weird, and I'm wasting all this food. And then again, like Holly, like you said, I feel like they're not getting enough because they're only
Yeah,
eating.
mine are slow. They sometimes they won't even start eating for minutes.
Oh, see, yeah.
Sometimes they get well. The thing is, I leave them now. Feeding time is like an hour long process for
Mm.
me. Yeah, because I have the two tanks and I'll go back and forth between the two. They each have their own feeding kit. And I'll fill, like in the display tank, they have dishes. So I put food in the dishes. And over the time, I just keep adding a little more and a little more until they show me they don't want any more, which they do. They'll turn their back on it or go somewhere else. So
Mm.
they're pretty easy. In the display tank, or that's the display tank. In the tiki tank, which used to be my grow out tank, it's more like a free for all. I don't put it in dishes for them. I broadcast it and then they eat it from wherever. They have dishes in there and sometimes they'll prefer to sit at a dish and eat, and then if that's the case I'll feed them in the dish. But just like the other ones, they'll sit there and eat slowly over time. They're not done in like 10 minutes or 12 minutes or 15 minutes. It takes them long enough. While they're doing that, I'm emptying the skimmer cups, changing out the socks and stuff. So all in all, then I come back around and see if anybody's still interested in food or not. By that time, I've turned one of their pumps back on to get stuff moving around in case they want anything else before I vacuum it out. So usually I'm vacuuming stuff out of the tanks at probably about the 40-45 minute time. And
I mean, let's be real.
nobody's eating at that time, anymore. They've stopped. They just don't want the food anymore, but they take their time eating,
I
during
get
the
it.
morning.
The big scare with that, of course, we know,
Hmm.
is the area will attack the food like really quickly. So it's if they do eat a piece after 45 minutes
Hmm.
on it. That I mean,
Hmm.
it's give and take. It's it's your risk tolerance. It's what your seahorses tell you they want. Get
Hmm.
it? I just want my seahorses to attack the food the way they are. They're not slow eaters. They attack it. They're snicking like crazy. And maybe I'm going to test it out using Ray's theory and try doing little tiny feedings multiple times to see if they eat everything I give them. Because again, when the food's on the floor, I can suck food with my turkey baster up off the floor, and I
Hmm.
have the male from Vincent. The male from Vincent is very standoffish. He doesn't like when the other seahorses get rambunctious and they're, twisting tails and doing their
Yeah,
wrestling.
wrestling around. Yeah.
He says, I'm out. I don't care if there's food, I'm out. Just like Aphrodite. Those two are just like not into it. So this male he always goes up top,
Hmm.
whether it be to the top of the Robert King char chamber or he hitches on one of the return nozzles or something like that. And he just stays there. It doesn't matter what I do, he stays there. However, I use my turkey baster to suck up some food from the floor, not new food. But
Hmm.
I picked a few tasty treats, and if I put
Hmm.
that turkey baster near him, he's like, "Gimme!" I've got the. I'll post them. If I squirt out the piece of my sis, he eats it no problem. He just won't eat off the floor.
Yeah.
It's probably
No,
not.
Sadie and Dandy are the same way. They want food in their dishes. And if they food spills, like Dandy's handicapped, he spills his food fairly often. I'll just suck it back up with a turkey baster. That's another reason why feeding time takes a while, because I have to come through every few minutes and suck up the spill
Sure.
and put it back in his dish. But he'll eat it once it's in the dish, even though it's been on the floor. He just wants it in his dish.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
And
I'm gonna
Sadie goes around the tank and eats out of every dish. She's a little
right,
pig.
right.
And she
I
chows down. She'll clean a plate and then I have to put more. She'll eat like 3 servings.
yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the ones in this tank, I don't know. It's harder for me with them because I'm like I said, I'm broadcast feeding them, and I don't like that as much because I can't notice what they're eating as much as I do the others. I can keep track because their food's in the dish.
See, I don't
When
like
it's gone,
this.
it's gone.
I'm the
But
exact
these guys, it takes me when I siphon, sometimes it's over a gallon of water that I have to siphon out to get all the food out of their,
opposite.
because
Me.
it's spread out. It's 75 gallons. So the
Yeah.
food's from one end to the other. Whereas in the other tank, I siphon out this dish, I siphon out this dish. If they use that dish over there, I siphon that out and the little surrounding area. But they're not spreading food all over the whole tank. It's condensed in little areas.
Well, the two things I would say is Cheryl, I'll let you speak in a minute because Cheryl had a method where she broadcast fed, but she made sure that her flow ratio made
Yeah,
it
you have it
everything.
directed to an area.
The other thing I would say is I don't like dishes. Dan kind of turned me off to dishes just because so much shit grows on everything in a tank, right? So if you've got a dish, to me, that's just like the floor. And in my head, I keep thinking they don't want to eat off the floor because stuff's growing there. I don't
But
know if
the
that's
dishes are easier to clean than the floor. You just pull them out. Just like you clean your dog's dishes.
yeah, but then
It's
again,
super easy.
I know I get it, but it's a pile of. I've never had a seahorse eat out of a dish. I haven't like pushed it or tried, but every seahorse I've kept would not eat out of a dish. I don't know. So I'm not.
Mine did, man. From the time they were fry, they preferred to eat out of a dish. They would have rather eaten the
They're
live
they're
brine shrimp out of a dish.
they're all a little different, and some of it
Yeah,
seems to be learning from the larger adults. Some of it seems to be their own. I have seen a lot of them that start backing off on eating food when it starts getting cold outside
Yeah,
and
I
their
think that's
tanks cool
mine
down.
too.
yeah.
And what they're doing is they're conserving energy and conserving nutrition because they're going into the cold spell where they're not going to have access to the same quantity of food, etc.
Which they don't, but
And
they will because they're in our tanks. But yeah,
yeah,
and I would
but
say,
they don't understand that.
Yeah,
And it's once it starts warming up is when they start courting again and cycle into breeding behavior. And that's when they really start munching down a lot of food is when they're going through that.
so maybe it's just
And
cold weather. But in my case, they're still looking at and staring at the food. I'll post some videos so you guys can see. And maybe we can talk next week because they still look like they really want it. It almost looks like a weak snick situation, but they're eating right before it, so it's not weak snick because they're eating
yeah.
fine. It's just once it's piled up on the floor, maybe like a dish. I don't know. They
There
don't want.
might be
And
something going
I
on with the
wanted to say,
Hikari
I
because
wanted,
mine are doing that too lately.
yeah. And Ray wanted to say something about the curry. I want to hear it, but I would also say my big thing about broadcast feeding versus dishes is that number one, it's freaking amazing. I have videos where you see those seahorses chasing the food and running all over the tank instead of sitting at a dish. And it's so magical. And they're getting exercise, right? Like they're chasing their food instead of just, and there's nothing wrong with either way. Every way's fine. Whatever works for you and your seahorses. But I really prefer to see them chase the food. It's just a thing for me. I don't know. But Ray, what were you saying about the quality of myces?
Mysis, and it doesn't matter what brand, but most people use Sakari, and that's the one I have most experience with myself. But over the years, I've noticed quite often there'll be times of the year, and it depends on when they're actually harvested and frozen and that. But there are times when the quality of the mysis is inferior to other times, just like there are
Yeah,
times when the mysis is a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller
Yeah.
certain times of the year. Well, when the quality is less and the mysis, it comes out, there's fewer full pieces. So when you're getting more partial pieces out there, they have to be more selective, or they will
yeah.
be more selective because for most of the seahorses, they want to pick only the best ones.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
Holly may
that's
have
what
run
I
into
know.
that. She may have found out that they weren't getting enough uh, whole pieces at that time, or pieces that they like. Like there are times I look at it, I can't see anything wrong with it, but they
They
see
do.
it. So
Yep.
That's
it may be
exactly what
that
I was thinking. And that's why I started giving them the whole cubes because I noticed they started eating more because there were more pieces that they wanted to eat. And
See,
yeah, I'm vacuuming up more, but it's because they're choosy. Now, what I have seen also lately in my mysis shrimp is there's been pieces that don't even look like mysis shrimp. I don't
right.
know what they are. One day that there was something that straight up looked like a piece of fish, like
Yeah.
a piece of fish got in there.
Yep.
And so I'm kind of like, well, it's kind of looking kind of different lately. So I just started giving them more, so they
I
have
don't
more to choose,
think,
which seems to
but
be
I
working
get
in
your
those
point.
ones. In the
I
tiki
get your
tank.
point. I could tell you, my Barbori, they would take their damn time. It didn't matter what you wanted. They would inspect every piece before they ate it. And if that piece did not have eyeballs,
Yeah.
if the sliced shrimp did not have eyeballs, they would not eat it.
Yeah.
But with the rest, I mean, like I've never had problems with these guys. They've always eaten anything I've given them. I know
Yeah.
they're good seahorses. They're from Holly. They're from Vincent. They're from Ocean Rider. They're good seahorses. So it's just I'm thinking it's something going on either with the food, as Ray is pointing out, or with the tank, and that's on me. Or maybe, as Holly said, I'm overfeeding. I'm gonna do some testing. I'll get back to you guys next week and let you know. And Bonnie said maybe because the food isn't moving and Inky want to hunt the food, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm all about broadcast feeding. And see, I've told you guys for months, weeks, Cheryl, I think, called me out on it, and getting a system where the food continues to flow, because they will keep eating it. And as Holly said, it's harder to collect if you're doing that. But I do have a video out there. I'll try to post it in the comments when we're done. But about learning how much your seahorses really need and want to eat in a certain setting. I'll post that. It gives some tips and tricks on how to figure out how much to feed. We're diving into some more details about like the time of year and stuff. But in general, it's a good video to get you to where you can feed not too much, but not enough, right? So
You're better off feeding less to begin with, watching them closely, and if they're
Right.
still feeding and still acting hungry, add them a little bit more food. You're
How
better
I
off
do it.
doing that than you are adding a bunch of food and saying, "Well, go ahead and eat it now," and getting
Yeah.
everything stuck on the bottom. The
Well,
other
that's what the video goes through, is basically feeding a little bit, seeing if they
Yeah.
need it a little bit more, and then all see leftover food, okay, back up a little bit. That's basically what the video says. It's a good video though, you guys go watch it.
Yeah.
And
That's why it takes me so long to feed them.
yes.
Because I'm adding more. I'm going to do this.
Oh,
I'm going to do
no. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to misspeak. I meant as you're learning your seahorses, right? So you do that when you first get them to figure out how much to feed them. And then in my case, at least, that's been what I fed at every feeding forevermore and never had any leftover food. I mean, very little. Now all of a sudden I'm dealing with this circumstance where they're not eating the food and I'm feeding the same amount. I don't know if I've messed up the schedule, if it's because it's winter. I don't know, but I've never experienced this before.
Okay.
Hang on. I've never experienced this before. In every other situation, every other seahorses I kept, I was able to know and the tips and tricks and learn how to feed my seahorses, and they ate everything I fed every time I fed it. So I don't know.
It depends on the age of the seahorses, the size of them, their current behavior versus their behavior in different. It's like if a seahorse if it's dead of winter and they're chilled, they're not going to be hunting a lot for food, or they're going to be moving into another area where it's much warmer and you won't even see them. Same by the same token, as they're coming off of the cold period, the winter months, and getting ready, they're coming into breeding condition, they are going to tend to eat more because their activity level has increased dramatically. And I've watched this in my own seahorses and been able to verify that the feeding patterns do change with tank conditions, water conditions, and what their background is like. And it's something we need to be aware of, because you can't feed them the same amount day in, day and out, 365 days a year, because you're going to end up with places where they're not getting enough food and other times where they're getting way too much.
Ray, do you agree with that? Did you change up your feeding habits depending on the time of year?
I honestly can't remember doing it. If I did it, it would be just subconscious making changes, and I can't say that that's not possible. There's a lot of things that I do through the year because I've been doing them so long. I'm just not conscious of making changes.
Yeah. It's
No,
just
this is
normal
all.
behavior. Mine changed
Yeah,
all
it's
the time. I'm
This is
always changing.
Chris is high.
wait, guys. This is the first time we've ever had this actual discussion about maybe you need to feed less in the colder days. And what really doesn't make sense to me about this discussion, just to be honest, is that it's not colder for them.
I
They're
just,
not going.
mine is,
Hang on. They're not
yeah,
going through seasonal changes because I keep the temperature in my house the same year round. I've
yeah.
never experienced this before. What you guys are saying sounds like it makes sense for wild seahorses, but in a tank, in a condition that never changes,
Mine
I
does change.
don't see.
but the thing is, you have to keep in mind, Kelly, that they also rely on changes in terms of day length, amount of light,
Yeah.
all these, all these.
Again, that
I
doesn't
watch my
change. I have a light on the tank. It stays the same year round.
does it?
The
Yes,
lighting in my room changes. I have skylights in there.
I know.
It's darker like now,
I get
their
what you're saying.
temperatures are different because their
Yeah.
temperature gets higher in the summer in my tanks. So things are different for them this time of year. But they change all the time for all kinds of reasons. Like if they're interested in courting, they don't eat as much, I've
Sure,
noticed.
sure.
All kinds of things. So I just adjust their feeding based on what's going on with them.
Yeah.
I don't always feed the same amounts. And yeah, when they're getting like more time with me, they get like a different amount of food too. Because what goes on when I can't keep a good schedule with them, they don't always notice that it's time to eat right now because they're used to eating at a certain time every day. Now they're eating at a different time and they might be napping during that time. It
See,
might
you know
take
what?
them a minute to figure out, oh, the it's time to eat now, and if we don't eat now, we won't get to.
See,
So that they
can't
come around and eat.
I can't believe that Ray is not speaking up right now. Like Ray would never say, "Oh, my seahorses are off schedule. They must be napping, so I better feed them differently." Like, I mean, that's
Well,
what
I don't feed them differently because they're napping. I say, I still have to feed them at that time because that's the time I'm here. But they might not eat as much at that time
sure,
because they were asleep.
sure.
And sometimes they'll miss a meal altogether
I get it.
because of that. Like if I get home too late,
I
so it's just
Well,
that.
the
get
thing with
it. I'm
yeah,
just
I don't
really
think they think
frustrated.
anything about it. They
I
instinctively just want
eat.
to eat throughout the day because they're grazers
Mm-hmm,
and they don't have the food all the time. They
mm-hmm.
get forced into eating the way we feed them. Uh,
Yeah,
but I don't think they actually think something like I better eat now or I'm not going to get it.
Right,
mm-hmm.
They're
right.
just going to they'll eat
They're
if
gonna
it's
eat or
there.
not.
Yeah, they're
Well,
going to
and
eat it when
I
you put it there.
my big frustration in this current situation, just to be clear, because I know I feel like I'm being combative. I don't mean to be, you guys, but I'm just frustrated with my own tank because I've never experienced this. I am very much like Holly. I love my seahorses. They're like my kids. I baby them. They're like my babies, right? But I still have never catered to. I don't think maybe I have, but bottom line is the way they're acting is weird. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't want anybody out there to ever jump to the conclusion that there's something wrong because they're acting weird. That's why I'm investigating, trying to figure out what's going on, why they're acting weird, why they're, as usual, attacking the food when I first feed it. Doesn't matter the time of day, doesn't I could
Mm-hmm.
feed them off schedule if I put food in that tank. Now, I will say, backing up from that, I never turn on a light and then feed them because they do need a minute to wake up, right? But as
Yeah.
long as I give them 10 minutes to wake up, I don't care what time of day it is. If I throw food in that tank, they're attacking it.
Mhm.
They love it. So for them to stop eating once it hits the floor just doesn't make sense. I'm going to see if I'm feeding too much by using Ray's method of fewer, no, more,
Less, but
less.
more often.
Yes, less, more often. And I saw Chris Carey's here. Chris, can you jump in? We'd love your thoughts because I'd love to play devil's advocate in these things. Like me and Holly will talk on the side, and I agree with her 100%. But when we're live, I'm going to say, but what about this? Because I want to make sure that everybody knows whatever's going on in your tank, you learn your seahorses and you know what to do. As Cheryl said earlier, there's no formula like this is what you need to do to be successful. It depends on your tank and your seahorses. There's no right answer. Just in my case, this is behavior I've never seen before, right? So it's messing me up a minute, and I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm going to try to do the Ray feeding less more often, and I'm going to try also Cheryl's observation or suggestion many months ago to maybe set up my flow a bit different, add maybe more flow when I'm feeding so that I can circulate the food. But Ray, I saw a question from Bonnie earlier that do you turn off your pumps when you feed? And you said you turn off all filters for feeding, right?
I don't turn off the filters. I don't turn off all the pumps. Like I use a lot of the Hagen power heads, eh?
Yeah.
And the ones that have the quick filters on them, I turn off.
So it
I
doesn't.
also turn off the return pump, but I also have the unfiltered power heads, and they're specifically set so that I can try and keep the food in suspension as long as possible. And I end up, I do have some stuff that has to be cleaned up after, but basically that's the rejected pieces. And especially the little stuff tends to settle out faster than the pieces that they want to eat.
Sure. Well, and that's what I'm thinking, because there's nothing more beautiful than seeing seahorses chase food. Like I've got videos where I feed the tank and it's magical when they're chasing that food around and they're getting there. Oh man, nothing wrong with doing it a different way. I'm just saying that's what I like. So I want to figure out how to do it and not have all this excess food that I'm wasting and that they're not eating and that I'm throwing away. It doesn't make sense. So I'll keep playing with it. Chris, I'm curious. You've worked with seahorses, multiple species for multiple years. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Why seahorses might not want to eat off the bottom of a tank. If it has to do with maybe piles of food, but that doesn't make sense because, as Holly pointed out, multiple people have really good success with feeding dishes where it is piles of food. I mean, it's a pile of food and they eat it and love it. My seahorses don't seem to like that. I'm just curious, why so many seahorses species are different and how I can get my seahorses to eat. I'm sick of wasting food. That's the real bottom line, guys. I'm cheap and I don't want to waste any more food. But Bonnie said, does barometric pressure have an effect on their diet hunger? And has it been stormy in your area recently? That's interesting because it has been. We've had weather that's up, down, all around. Could that be affecting it, you guys?
I've never seen it affect any that I've had over the years.
I remember Dan saying that when a hurricane was coming, he knew it by his seahorses because they would start acting different. They would start acting funny.
I've also had mine when we have severe thunderstorms with tornado warnings coming in. They all pile up in one corner, practically on top of each other, and do not move.
Wow.
They all go to one corner.
Weather incidents, so I wouldn't see it then.
What, Ray?
I don't get hurricanes and tornadoes.
Yeah, same here. Our barometric pressure does not change all that much where I live.
We have the pressure changes, but not significant enough that
Yeah.
I've ever noticed anything change with the seahorses. Like we can have a big change just overnight.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a gradual change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can have rain coming in and get little or no response, but there's definitely something that occurs when they're saying tornadoes and stuff like that. And the only thing I can think of is the change that's been noted in other seahorses where they're reacting to a change in barometric pressure. And yes, she's right. Dan has reported on more than one occasion his males who suddenly start delivering the fry like crazy when they're expecting hurricanes to hit in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's a big change in barometric pressure, which may be, and it would make sense from a survival perspective, unload, get out of this mess kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on how you look at it.
Well, and if you think about it overall, as Zen Ginger she said, it's helpful for breeding purposes to freshwater fish. You said seahorses can act different when getting ready to breed. So I wondered if they could be connected. Absolutely. Dan has tons of tricks that, I don't know all of them, but he has tricks with temperature, with pressure, with lighting, because in the wild, they do have breeding seasons. Absolutely. And Cheryl would back up that even in a tank, they have breeding seasons. So absolutely. Agree. Holly will be right back.
I think some of my favorite though are the males and females. They start dancing together, and all of a sudden, every few minutes, the male goes looking for food, snicks a couple pieces of mysis, it goes back to dancing, and you're sitting there scratching your head, going,
Well,
"Are you hungry or are you enamored?"
right. And Chris Carey said it just depends. Whatever it's just whatever the seahorses have been trained to eat. I'm with you there, but that's my confusion. Is my seahorses have been trained to eat from the water column and from the floor, and now all of a sudden they won't eat from the floor. It's so weird. I'm gonna have to post some videos. I keep talking about it. It's pointless because you got to see it, right? I got to show you what I'm saying and be like, why are they acting like they're still hungry, hovering over the food, staring at it and not eating it? It's making me crazy. I don't know if I need to set up a dish like Holly suggests, or keep the food floating like Cheryl has. I don't know, but or feed less more times, as Ray had suggested. I'm gonna try all these things, and I'll let you guys know for sure. But
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's also that there's different personalities, and even if they're the same species, you can get different responses to the same stimuli from different individuals, and that's something else that you have to consider. And it's been documented with Buchanan's Whitey and some of the others where the research has been done in Australia and reintroduction programs, etc. And they're finding that there is definitely a difference. There's a difference in the way the females change because the males typically mark out their own territory and stay in a finite area. The females have a greater tendency to harvest food versus the males. But the males are also the ones that are doing all the heavy lifting when it comes to carrying the fry. So it actually makes sense that they would have a stable, secure environment to hang out in.
And I get what you're saying, Cheryl, but in this case, and you're absolutely right. I'm not trying to argue with anybody. I'm just saying that I've had these seahorses for 3 years now, and they've ate the same way. I've never had trouble. Now, all of a sudden, this past year, they don't want to eat off the floor. It's the craziest thing. I don't know if I've just spoiled them too much. I'm feeding them too much, but I didn't change my feeding habits. So I don't know. I'm going to play with it. I'll come back to you. Interestingly enough, Chris Carey said he's gotten sea dragons to eat from the bottom. Holy wow. I want to know how you did that one. And
he's a dragon trainer.
He is. He absolutely is. And Ray, you asked if I was having to remove more uneaten food now that they don't eat off the floor. And yes, that's my concern. I really don't care if they don't eat off the floor. It's just that I'm putting in the same amount of food and they're not eating it. When I use my own methods to learn how much they needed in each feeding, and they ate all of it, and now all of a sudden they're not. Maybe it's that they're older, maybe it's that it's winter. I don't know. But in 3 years, in multiple years with multiple species, I've never experienced
I
this.
wouldn't have
So
expected it to happen to all of them at the same time. Like some,
Yeah.
if it was a case of getting older and their preferences changing, it would have been one or two gradually
Right.
changing. It wouldn't be all of them at the same time.
Well, I'm going to post some videos so you guys can see what I'm talking. I'll post some older videos, same amount of food, newer videos where they're not eating it all.
I personally
know what's-
prefer they don't eat off the floor.
Right.
It may,
And why is that?
it may be fine for most of the time, but if they're used to eating off the floor, and if somehow when you're cleaning the tank you've missed something that's hidden somewhere for a period of time, it's sitting there getting bacteria laden, and they go along and they snick it up then. They don't know that it's been sitting there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something, and they snick it up, and that may, if conditions aren't ideal, or if maybe the individual immune system of that particular seahorse isn't up to what some of the others might be, then you could end up with problems out there. That's only a theory. I don't have any proof to back it up.
Then Ginger said the
I
same thing.
believe
She
that.
said, I a razor or scraper across the bottom in case there's some hard to see residue or buildup that they maybe don't like on their snouts. Absolutely, that was my number one thought. The other thought was, and this is just going back to like something Dan said a long time ago, my freezer probably doesn't freeze as well as it should for frozen foods, right? And I will say that's the thing I didn't tell you guys when I started talking about this. I buy the big, huge Hikari flat packs, right?
Yeah,
the big ones.
That's what I did, 1 pound.
So maybe it's that the food, maybe they're attacking the food hungry. They
And
take
it
the food
tastes
bites,
bad.
or they sniff it. We had the argument whether they can smell or not. I swear
Yeah.
maybe it's just not appetizing to them. I don't know. I'm going to get new food as another condition to my little experiment here, so I can figure out what's going on and help you guys.
Kelly,
run it.
you
Yes.
can buy the flat packs both in the jumbo Hikari
And
and in the regular Hikari.
No. I buy the right kind, but I'm saying it's been in my freezer for quite a while.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's
it's
I'm just
old, they
thinking
can tell.
yeah.
Yeah.
And because they attack it when it hits, then they're like, eh. And then they're
That's
inspecting it. And I feel
they're
like
choosy.
they're smelling it. I swear
They're
they can smell it.
choosy. I think you're on to something there, because I always wonder that, because sometimes about mine. Well, I stopped buying the big flat packs because I don't have as many seahorses as I did. And I like the cubes because I like the portion size is a lot easier than breaking apart the big thing and keeping the big thing, in
Yeah.
the freezer for a while, because now I figured out one of those Hikari cube packs lasts me pretty much exactly a week. So I know exactly how much to buy. So I never have tons of it on hand. I get about a month's supply at once or 2 weeks, because sometimes I go to the store and they don't have 4 packs for me to buy. Sometimes there's 2. So I don't have them on hand backed up for a long time. So they're fresher. And then I like the cubes because it's a measured amount. I don't have to figure it out. So there's sometimes when I'll give them a whole cube, sometimes I'll give them a half cube or 3/4 cube.
Yep.
how they like to eat and when and how much.
Yep. Well,
And so I'm kind of liking that, but I do notice now and then sometimes I'll open a new pack and they won't be as interested in it, and I'm like, okay, what's wrong with this one?
right.
And
Right.
I can tell, I think,
Well,
and they're more
Yeah.
I'm going to stop.
excited sometimes than others about the food.
As Dan has said, unless you can get a real true deep freezer, don't stock up. Don't keep your food.
Yeah.
And I ran into a situation where I couldn't get frozen mysis locally. So that's why I started buying the bigger packs. But I think you guys are onto something. However, I'm calling myself out. Ray called me out in the chat because then Ginger said maybe if it's older, it's deteriorating more and breaking into smaller pieces, and maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze to chase around all the little bits. But Ray said, except that you said you can siphon up off the bottom and squirt, and the seahorse that's up top will
Yeah.
eat from the water column the same piece they would eat off the floor. Right. So, guys, I don't have an answer. I came to you guys with the question. So I'm going to try everything you've suggested. I'm going to try new food. No. First, I'm going to try smaller feedings more often when I'm home to see if that's the case. I'm going to try Cheryl's suggestion to get more flow that's not the return pump, so I can still turn that off, because Bonnie, I do turn the return pump off because I don't want the food going back into the bag while I'm feeding. So I do turn it off. That's why it hits the floor. So I'm going to take Ray's suggestion to feed more often, little amounts. Cheryl's suggestion next, if that doesn't work, to create more flow in the tank when I turn the return pumps off. Then I'm going to take whoever's suggestion to buy new food and see if maybe it's just old food, because it could be. Yeah, Ray, buy a power head that I can add just when feeding for extra flow. Exactly. Keep it moving. See if they chase it. See if they eat it. But first, I'm going to try just the smaller feedings to see if maybe I am feeding too much because I feel bad or whatever, for going on vacation. So I'll try that first. Then I'll try the power head. I'll investigate the floor for sure and try to scrape it, because it does. It gets algae on it, like the little green smears. Yeah. So who knows what's growing there? And then I will try new food, because I think they're all good suggestions. It could be any of those things. We'll figure it out for sure. But thanks, you guys, for making this Wine Wednesday about me and my seahorses. Sorry. If you have any questions or need some help or comments, Zen Ginger, when you setting up? We're still waiting for you. And that's what I hate when I bring, something that I'm trying to figure out, or something bad to the channel. I'm like, oh no, Zen's gonna back out and think it's too hard. It's not. I'm bringing the worst. Like you have 465 days in a year. 450 of them are amazing, and the other 15 are bad, right? They're amazing to keep. I love my seahorses. Coming and seeing them come up to the glass and interact with me is freaking amazing. Everybody seahorses. Just do it the right way, right?
One thing too, when you're talking about food and feeding, is I have watched a number of different species and seahorses, and I have seen my hippocampus combs, tiger tails, be very, very picky and careful in what they eat, versus, and they'll do a lot of rock hunting. Actually, I call them my rock crawlers, because they use the tip of their tail to hold on to the rock and then insert their snout in all the holes in all the rocks hunting. That's even after they've been fed frozen food and conditioned on it, versus erectus, which tend to be the what I call the resident seahorse pigs,
Yeah.
who will pretty much eat most of anything that you feed them. And so there's definitely not only species differences, there's individual differences as well in what you're going to see with your seahorses.
Oh yeah, for
And
sure.
no two are alike.
Sure.
And
Go ahead.
you can take that into consideration too.
Absolutely.
Dandy is so funny when he first gets his breakfast in the morning. The way he eats, it's funny to watch him because he doesn't just snick a piece. He grabs a mouthful. He'll eat like 3 or 4 pieces at once, and they'll be sticking out of his snout. He's just all, oh. He plunges his face in the dish, grabs a mouthful, and then deals with it. And then as the meal progresses, he slows down and gets more choosy. But his first bite is just raw. Everything I can get in one bite, I'm gonna fit in my snout. And then he picks up his head and it's sticking out everywhere.
Well, I want to say, Zen Ginger said, I think you should try one thing at a time so you can pinpoint what the true issue is after the fact. And I'm getting seahorses eventually. Yay. And I know that when I get excited and I've got all these ideas, I ramble and I'm like, I'm going to do this and this and this. But no, you're absolutely right. That's what I'm going to do for the next week, or at least 3 to 4 days. I'm going to try feeding smaller feedings often and see if they the food. Then I'm going to try, if that doesn't work, Cheryl's idea of and Ray's idea. Then if that doesn't, I'm absolutely going to take a minute each thing that I try so that I can give you guys actual, this is what worked, right? I agree with you 100%. I didn't mean to make it sound like I was going to change all this stuff at once, because you're absolutely right. Do one thing at a time. That way you know what works, right? Because if you throw everything at something, you don't know what happened. So I'm with you 100%. And I don't know what Ray's saying in the comments. I can't follow. But anyways, guys, we're hitting 10 o'clock. We're after 10 o'clock. You know, I appreciate you guys coming. And I appreciate that you guys made this session all about my stuff. I apologize. Next week, I'll make sure to only have results and not ramble endlessly about what's going on with my tank. The only other thing I would say is, and we will discuss this next week because I'm going to have to close for tonight, but I've noticed some massive flirting, and it's because I raised the salinity in the tank. I think that it's supposed to be the opposite, right? Horses typically breed when you lower the salinity.
No, a change is what it
A
needs.
change
Okay.
of any kind, I think.
All right. Well, I didn't on purpose, but when I did that massive water change, I realized the day after that the salinity was a little bit higher, a lot higher. And all of a sudden, they're like horny toads in a pond. I mean, we'll see if I get fry soon. I would love to get fry soon. So we'll see. But appreciate all you guys coming. Anything else before we close?
Nope.
Nope.
How much does a new pair of metal shoes cost for me?
What?
How much does a new pair of metal shoes cost for my feet?
I don't know. What are you talking about?
It was a joke.
Oh, I missed it. I missed it.
I missed it too.
Yeah, well, huh?
I was talking about getting horseshoes for my feet.
Oh,
Oh,
all right. Well, I don't know, Cheryl. But for tonight, we're going to say Happy Wine Wednesday. I appreciate you guys coming and bearing through my endless trying to figure things out. Don't worry, next week will be more about you and your questions, and we will have some guests soon. So stick with us, and we'll see you next week. Happy Wine Wednesday, everybody.